This is not the place for you, Rebecca. I, together with Olivia, is the rightful owner of this house. My body froze. The impact of the words was like a goods train crashing into my chest. I was pointing towards the front door of the house I had paid for as Richard. The guy I had previously called was making his way there. I had filled the house with care, compromise, silent pain, and a whole lot more for 13 years. Ethan remained still behind him. This is my spouse. I am partnered with someone. It was my own fault. He avoided looking at me, on one occasion only. It didn't help that I murmured, "You're joking." His mother Grace was putting on an act as she clumsily juggled her cane. I was aware of her behavior, though. For a long time I had noticed its selective memory and convenient confusion. Whenever it was convenient for her, her so-called dementia would activate. Olivia, too. She disregarded the need to pretend. She smirked like a cat that has just devoured a songbird as she stood there with her arms folded and her chin up. "You ought to have looked over the deed transfer paperwork more closely," she remarked dispassionately. "But I suppose that's just your inner lawyer talking. You were too preoccupied with rescuing others to remember to look out for yourself." Somewhere within me, I sensed a crack. Embrace calmness, not even a broken heart. Simply put, silence, just before a storm, tears the sky apart. There is a certain quietness. With each mortgage payment, supermarket run, every moment spent feeding a family that never recognized me as one of their own, I had carved myself this existence for myself. I gave Grace a bath. Richard ate off my hand. Even when Ethan's business went bankrupt, I was there to help. Until I was completely depleted, I gave. I was being tossed aside like yesterday's garbage. And now this. "Would you like me to go?" I spoke softly, meeting Ethan's gaze. He was unsure. I required nothing more. I retreated a little. Next came still another. I refrained from shedding a tear. A scream eluded me. So did I. It wasn't a defeated woman's grin. The expression on her face betrayed someone's recent awakening to her true identity. "You believe you've triumphed," I said, gentle. "But there's more to come." I pivoted, my polished floored heels resonating as I made my way to the bedroom. My bedroom, to gather what little I had remaining my dignity. Reason being, they neglected to mention something crucial. I am more than simply a lady. Solicitor here. Furthermore, they have transformed me into their gravest fear. Gratefulness makes us human, they say. Sometimes, though, it ensnares us. My life came crashing down around me when I met Ethan Parker at the age of 29. In the spring of that year, my dad passed unexpectedly, leaving behind a mountain of unpaid bills and a small, dilapidated home in Denton. He wasn't careless, just unfortunate. His family name became a cautionary story when his little construction firm was swept under by a disastrous partnership and the attorneys started calling. Working night jobs, subsisting on ramen, and tutoring high school students were all ways I made it through law school at the time. Suddenly, Ethan materialized. He tended to keep to himself. While doing so, he paid attention. He prepared the food. He helped a girl who had always felt pressure find tranquility. I will never forget his words when I informed him about the debt. "You're not tying the knot for financial gain, Rebecca. I am proposing to you. Plus, I'll consult with my folks. Together, we'll figure it out." It was done. Instantly, the Parkers settled about $100,000. It wasn't charity, they said. An investment in family, Richard remarked with a smile. They convinced me. We tied the knot in a low-key courtroom ceremony 2 months down the road. Dress casually, no bubbly, I solemnly swear, As soon as I passed the bar and got a job, I would repay them completely. They tried to convince me it wasn't important, but I was certain. By the time I got beyond that bar, God, I'll never forget how Ethan shook his arms as he pulled me off the ground outside the courthouse. I am proud, he stated. I was the strongest woman he had ever met, he said. I also believed him. Shortly after that, we relocated to Austin. A medium-sized legal practice hired me. Ethan was an independent contractor for a Seattle IT firm. Before Richard's collapse, life was easy. Not good. His hip was fractured, requires surgical intervention. He would walk again according to the doctors, but getting well would be a long, expensive process. I then proposed that we construct a new house for them. Level 1. Stairs not present, no obstacles. To let them know how much their generosity meant to me, I felt compelled to return the favor. Between Ethan's co-working space and my company, we purchased a land midway between the two locations, right west of the Colorado River. At the end of the day, the price tag was close to $470,000. The down payment was paid for by me. I took out a mortgage in my own name for 30 years. Not even a twitch escaped me. At first, Grace attempted to object, claiming it was excessively generous. Nonetheless, Richard gave a little nod. With a murmur, "It's okay." Ethan embraced me and offered his arm. "This is essential for them. Rest assured we will attend to their every need." I personally brought them in, assisted with the arrangement of their bedroom, including labeling light switches, programming the thermostat, and stocking the refrigerator. Grace held my hand a week later and assured me, "You're not just a daughter-in-law, you're our daughter." My tears flowed freely. Even when the years passed and the compliments dried up, I couldn't stop sobbing. Things were rather minor at start. Whenever Richard needed me, he would summon me from across the house by voice rather than the bell. After Grace scolded me for becoming angry, she would repeatedly ask me to clarify the same thing. Later in the day, Ethan began to remain at work. Then they began using the guest room as their bedroom, just to get better rest. My silence was regrettable, but how can you be critical of those who rescued you? My rationale was that I was powerful. I had a debt to them. That this exemplified love, serene, tolerant, and everlasting. The mortgage wasn't paid off automatically. On occasion, I put in 60 hours a week. It didn't stop me from returning home night after night to help with cooking, cleaning, guiding Grace to the loo when she got lost, and lifting Richard onto his chair when his back locked up. After my mom died away, nobody came to see how I was doing. Nobody came to see whether I was all right. There was that one time I told Ethan I was completely overwhelmed, that I was becoming increasingly disoriented and drained of energy. As he massaged my back, he reassured me, "It will get better. Please, darling, just hang in there." He departed to immerse himself in Call of Duty for an uninterrupted 6 hours. Yet I persisted, reason being Richard's actions remained fresh in my mind. The words said by Grace, that which Ethan had pledged, and vows they had significance for me. It wasn't until afterwards that I realized they weren't the same to them. Olivia would occasionally peek over Grace's shoulder and say something into her ear, and then she'd give me a sly grin. When I brought up the subject of the joint account, Ethan became quite agitated. After telling me there's nothing for you, Richard still wouldn't show me the mailbox. However, I choose to ignore it. My strength made me the strongest. Why? Because I had this idea that family was important. I didn't know I wasn't living since I had been existing for so long. The years 13 and 14 went by. With each passing one, they gradually sapped me of my strength. until I was nearly completely sapped. No, I remained unbroken. I knew that the last mortgage payment will be paid at some point. I would finally get my freedom back, if only. Perhaps then, they would see all I had sacrificed and appreciate me more. Though I was mistaken, they thanked me right away. I was ready to be tossed out by them. On a Tuesday it occurred. On this very ordinary Tuesday, the sun sets exactly so through the kitchen window, and the cinnamon aroma wafts through the house courtesy of the candle you kindled after work. The dishwasher was loaded, and I was about to finish. 13 years to the exact dollar had passed since the final mortgage payment. Cleared that morning, the confirmation email was even preserved in my inbox like a prized possession. A part of me thinks so. An emotion I hadn't experienced in a long time washed over me as I stood by the refrigerator, glass of wine in hand. Happiness returned. However, that split second was fleeting. A bottle of craft beer that Ethan had brought home was cracked open when he stepped in. His arms rested on the counter as he sat across the island, grinning broadly as if he had won the jackpot. "I think it's time we celebrate now that the home is paid for," he stated. A blink from me. He had absolutely refrained from bringing up the mortgage at any point. After all these years, he still hadn't once inquired about the remaining balance, suggested a contribution, or even looked at the bank statements I had on display in my office. I averted my gaze. Then why the sudden fascination? He took a sip from his glass and shrugged. "Babe, I'm just so proud of you. Well done. And I believe that merits a significant reward, such as a weekend retreat. Perhaps Napa, no one else. Getting away." In the wake of frigid silences and years of frigid dinners, it didn't convince me. I desired to nonetheless. Thus I grinned. "I like the sound of that." He drew near, grabbed my hand, and planted a kiss on its surface, exactly like he had in the past. And for an instant, I allowed myself to accept the falsehood. When I returned from work 3 days later, the living room was crowded with people. "My name is Ethan, the people who raised him." "Hello, Olivia." With everyone sat, as if for an intervention, of course. I left my briefcase beside the entrance. "I don't understand." First to stand was Richard. In one hand, he held a manila folder, and in the other he wore that self-satisfied, scripted expression that he employed whenever he wanted to say anything hurtful. "You have been an incredible asset to this family, Rebecca," he remarked. "I assure you, put it down. However, now that the house is paid off, we can discuss what comes next." Where this was heading, I didn't approve. Grace sat up straight, her mouth pursed, crossed arms and an arched eyebrow. Olivia glanced at me directly. There was no way Ethan would even raise his eyes to look up. The term "next steps" is confusing. I inquired with great caution. Richard took the packet out. Deed transfer paperwork, signed, notarized, and dated 2 weeks ago, was within. He announced that Benjamin and Olivia were the new owners of the residence. "Please vacate by the end of the week." My pulse plummeted. Retaining my grasp on the couch's edge, I stepped back. "Who are you?" "This house was purchased by me. Each and every 1 penny. "Not at all." A harsh, "It was never yours," was cut out by Grace. Her typically gentle and rambling speech became as crystal clear as glass. Olivia chimed up, saying, "You built it for the family, P. And now the household has settled on its optimal application." Suddenly I felt parched. "You made this up while you changed my name." All at once, Ethan raised his eyes to the sky. "No one falsified any documents. The refinancing documentation were clearly not read attentively by you. When you signed the tax documents 6 months ago, you added them to the title. You willingly turned it over. I was nauseous. According to Olivia, that paper was meant to simplify inheritance filings. It slipped my mind. My body was weary. My schedule was packed. I had faith in them. Why, I inquired. To what end would you subject me to this? Grace grinned, still flashing the same grin from the day she informed me she'd never met a working woman who seemed disconnected from her family's ideals. She spoke in a gentle voice, explaining that they assumed you would be thankful. However, you began behaving as if you were the only tenant. Rick let out a laugh. As a law degree holding live-in nurse, Rebecca, you were always just the help. Finally mustering up some courage, Ethan rose to his feet. Rebecca, I've had enough. I want a divorce. This marriage isn't working, and it hasn't in a long time. My ears perked up as I fixed my gaze on him. A split. There was complete ambush with no notice or discussion. I muttered, "You knew. You planned this." He kept silent about it. My legs nearly gave way. Every sound was muted and distorted. It was as if I were underwater. What was that, just a deposit for this treachery? I said in response to the question about the debt. The money I paid back to your family, all of it. Just shrugged Richard. You helped us construct a house, and we helped you get back on your feet. I'd say we're equal, on par. Does it even? Their floors had been cleansed by me, chauffeured Grace to each and every one of her medical appointments. I put in many hours of hard work just to be let go like a senile employee, and that was deemed equal. Furious, I looked across at Ethan. In my question, I sought to know if you felt any affection whatsoever for me. He remained silent. Being silent can also be a response. Standing up, Olivia straightened her shirt. The house isn't yours anymore, and the marriage is ended, so you may as well start packing. Following her, Grace's voice floats in. And deposit your key too. Don't forget it. In my breast, I sensed a stirring of something old and sinister. My silence was deafening. Stopped crying. Opted not to plead. Every one of their faces was icy when I studied them closely. My back straightened, and a smile spread over my face. Pardon, wasn't it? A promise that was. My voice remained firm as I warned, "You'll regret this." "What on earth are you going to do, Rebecca?" Richard chuckled. My briefcase was taken up by me, swiftly brushed by them. Proceed up the flight of steps. Next, close the door. They assumed my mission was complete. I was removed from their minds, but they had no idea who they were up against. Their worst error was putting their trust in me. What comes next? Their worst nightmare was going to come true because of me. That night, I slept poorly. Apparently, I was no longer permitted to use the main bed, so I perched on the edge of the guest bed and stared at the partially packed luggage next to me. I had already been evicted from a deeper place than my physical body. Even if my toothbrush and clothing were still in the bathroom and the closet respectively, my home, my marriage, and my feeling of belonging were all seized by them. But the silence was the worst part. It was completely alone. Nobody came to check on me. Individuals that I had formerly considered relatives had disappeared into oblivion. I had decided by morning I silently departed from the residence before to the break of day. I didn't bang the door or leave any kind of message. Like they expected me to, I just gathered all of my belongings and disappeared. Nonetheless, I refrained from sprinting. My focus shifted back to the group. On the outskirts of Austin, I checked into a modest extended stay flat. Hot water is unavailable after 9 p.m., and there is just one bedroom with very thin walls. But I owned it. Nobody hurled insults my way down the hall, dropped dirty clothes, or demanded to know why supper wasn't ready. It had been years since that happened. No one was around, intolerably silent. It was salads from the box that I consumed. Stayed late to do my tasks. I sobbed quietly in the shower, away from prying ears. Finally, late one night, my phone went off. For months, I had not seen that particular number. Hello, Benjamin, brother of Ethan, the disgraced members of the Parker family. Apparently just got a divorce from Olivia. He is a former Marine and now works as a contractor. I paused. Afterwards, I took up. He said, "Rebecca, I heard what happened." Patiently, I waited. I was completely unaware of the deed transfer and the divorce. Olivia kept me in the dark, claiming it was only a tax matter. She never once brought your name up. He groaned. I remained silent. "Listen," he went on. "If you want assistance, I'm here. You're under no obligation to trust me. God knows no one else in that family deserves it." I felt my heart race at the sound of his words, feeling no sympathy, no wrongdoing, anger. I made him furious. In an instant, I felt less alone. We reconnected at a roadside cafe the next day. He appeared older, slimmer, and with a scar on his temple that I couldn't place. Still, there was no change in the expression on his face. "I desire to rectify this," he stated. "Not due to my status as your ex-brother-in-law, but rather I am familiar with the appearance of treachery. I have also worn that emblem." Presented to me was a flash disk. "Then begin." Within were all things financial documents. Olivia learns Ethan's secret, records demonstrating the manipulation of the refinance. Olivia received texts from Grace in which she made fun of me and plotted my covert eviction. The legal gray area of requiring a signature without complete permission is also addressed in a draft email that Richard drafted. There was more to it than that. A well-planned assault was carried out. Plus, I possessed receipts. Later that night, I turned on my laptop and accessed the client database of the company. Next, I placed a single call. Duval Marcus. My first case was assigned by this senior partner, who was also a mentor to me. He prevented me from even finishing. He spoke forward and said, "I'm in. Let's bury them." The subsequent 2 weeks were a whirlwind of evidence processing, emails, and coffee. Every single paper that Ethan had ever sent me just for review was examined by me. All of the login credentials that he had saved on the Google Drive that we provided. Every Grace voicemail. Whenever they had screamed, ridiculed, or cornered me during a remote deposition in the living room, I had inadvertently stored a video from my laptop's webcam. I had been recording, but they had no idea. They completely forgot the camera was rolling, yet I accomplished it. Additionally, every time was now recorded, typed, and protected by official timestamps. Benjamin, meantime, was hard at work in the background. The property transfer he claimed in his challenge had been executed under coercion and without his knowledge or agreement. Marcus also drafted the lawsuit during this time: financial extortion, emotional abuse, and constructive fraud. As an eager participant in the false transfer of property, Olivia's name was included on the list. It wasn't as simple as resisting. Their entire scheme was being set ablaze by us. The showdown followed. The time was 1 p.m. on a Thursday. I requested that the receptionist at my company set up a conference room. Ethan, Richard, Grace, and Olivia strode in at precisely 3 o'clock in the afternoon, seeming as if they were prepared for battle. They were unaware that we occupied the superior position. Marcus was on my right and Benjamin to my left as I sat across from them. For 30 seconds, nobody spoke a word. At last, Ethan spoke up. "What is this?" I passed a folder over the table. All the documents are photocopied within. Evidence from medical documents, video stills, text threads. And Grace's financial transactions reveals that she was never officially diagnosed with dementia, only with mild cognitive fog. Here I informed them, is where you lay out your case." Attempting to joke, Ethan said, "This isn't a courtroom." Marcus interjected, saying, "No, but it will be." A letter serving as official notification of the lawsuit was extracted by him. Olivia became white. Rigidity gripped Richard. After this, Grace blinked and wanted to know whether we were still having lunch. "How about Ethan?" He collapsed. "What is it that you desire?" he said. Up I got. "I want my house returned to me. I want my reputation cleared. I want compensation for every penny you took. And every night I slept believing you loved me." I leaned in close, making eye contact with all of them. "And most importantly, I wish you understood that you failed to shatter my spirit." The phone went dead, unable to do so. Reason being, they had never been so speechless before. They departed, and I remained alone in that room, not because I lacked strength, and not only because I needed to experience the taste of triumph in solitude. There was no noise. It didn't have explosive properties. Nothing was dirty. Right on. As if the truth were to pierce through the mist. Being alive wasn't enough anymore. Rebuilding was my task. Also this time, as I see fit. On April 3rd, the court date was scheduled, but that was a long time before the fight started. Ethan, Richard, Grace, and Olivia Parker were the 4 defendants precisely named in Marcus's case. What are the accusations? Fraud that is constructive manipulation of emotions and financial compulsion, and civil deceitful stealing. More than just a property was at stake in the dispute. For their advantage, I was bent, stripped, and twisted for nearly 13 years of my existence. The goal was to prevent them from ever harming anyone else in the future. A flurry of media attention ensued. A well-respected attorney duped into leaving her house after paying the full mortgage by her own in-laws. From local blogs and legal podcasts to morning radio, the news was everywhere. I was unconcerned about any of that, though. Entering the courtroom with confidence and honesty was what was important. It was a chilly courtroom. Every footfall resounded, as if it were trying to make a statement, as fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. It seemed like Ethan had lost a lot of weight. Anxious, uneasy. His tie was uneven. Every morning I would assist Grace in finding her faded leather pocketbook, and she would wear a lavender shawl. As if she were attending a brunch instead of a civil trial, she couldn't help but glance around the room. Unmoved and with his arms folded, Richard sat there. An air of defiance hung across his face. Plus Olivia. She gave me not a single glance. Very well. Their scrutiny wasn't necessary. Their responsibility was crucial. There was little ceremony when Justice Harper, an elderly woman, assumed the bench. Her frankness and recollection were trademarks of her personality. In her courts, any possibility of evading consequences would perish. The summary was calm and straightforward when Marcus began. He talked about sacrifice, how I had honestly paid off the mortgage and taken care of all my family responsibilities. He detailed the events, which included years of marital enslavement, emotional gaslighting cloaked in duty, and a fraudulently arranged legal transfer. He presented the invoices, the electronic correspondence, the papers that were changed. The footage remains static. My cries for aid met with scorn, indifference, and rejection. The video followed. From my laptop's webcam, the one that went unnoticed by them the whole time. Grace was advised by Ethan to just fake it if she had to, despite the fact that she doesn't read her own signature. Olivia finds it hilarious that I walk around like she owns the place. A lady who out-earns her husband is someone Richard never should have trusted. The soundtrack was silent. There is no dramatic music. Nothing but honest, unfiltered quiet. Upon the conclusion of the film, the judge reclined. She was hesitant to talk at first. After that, she locked eyes with Ethan. "Excuse me, Parker, do you have any thoughts about this footage?" she said with an air of formality. Gradually, Ethan rose to his feet. "I didn't know she was taping. It wasn't all malevolent, you know." False response. Harper showed no fear. "So you're acknowledging our observations. Just feeling bad about getting caught." Everybody in the courtroom froze. Ethan took a seat. Then Grace attempted to speak. Unfortunately, her attorney raised an objection. She gently redirected his grasp. She proclaimed, "I'm a sick woman. Woman with force. I find it challenging to remember things. From time to time, I'm completely confused." An eyebrow was arched by Harper. "It's official, Mrs. Parker. You're sworn in. Are you legally declared to be mentally incompetent according to a medical diagnosis?" A blink from Grace. Next, they turned to Olivia. "No," she said into the air, claiming a blown out of proportion family matter, and a hazy boundary were the basis for the defense's attempt to change the subject. But it was falling on deaf ears. "Not following the video. Sure, after the money trail is complete. I mean, after listening to myself say, 'I simply want to be noticed, please, for a single instance, in addition to the things I do for you.'" Negotiations for a settlement started on the third day of the trial. They choose not to have this matter continue for another week of public shame and negative press. Marcus approached me privately and made a suggestion. "Pay back the money, $70,000. Return of the house deed in its whole to my name." A public notarized apology was put into the court record by each of the four accused. Above anything else, mandatory non-contact terms imposed by a court. Nobody from that group would ever contact me, pay me a visit, or return to my workplace. Immediate legal action would be taken in the event of a violation. If I wanted to demand more, Marcus wanted to know. I had the opportunity to do it. The power was in my hands, the compassion, position of moral superiority. Yet another item was with me as well. No war. Peace, on the other hand, doesn't always demand retribution. Closure is necessary at times. Nodding, I consented. "It is acceptable." Outside the courthouse, Benjamin was patiently waiting for us as we departed. The newly confirmed, notarized, and clean deed documents were within the packet he gave me. A soft welcome home came from him. So did I. It seemed genuine after months of denial. After that, we lost touch. Benjamin claims that he then relocated to Arizona. Currently, Grace and Richard are roommates and split rent at a senior apartment complex close to Waco. Olivia and Benjamin were divorced 2 months subsequent to it. She's putting in extra hours at a department store to pay back the little she could put towards the settlement. I was content with it. That wasn't necessary. All that was needed was the truth. As for me, I gave the house a facelift, spun paint on the walls, locked the door. Their whole collection of dishes, curtains, and pillowcases was donated. I didn't see it as a memorial to the things they stole from me. What I was able to restore was shown by it, totally by myself, without a round of applause, absence of eyewitnesses, simply put, power. One that can be done without seeking authorization, let alone pardon. As ChatGPT put it, "Today the home is dead silent." That was different from the suffocating silence of yesteryear. This stillness is meaningful, peaceful, rock solid, similar to the calm that follows a storm when you go barefoot outside to reconnect with nature. The case closed 14 months ago. Finally, in every meaningful way, the house, my house, is mine. Each morning as I make my way across the living room with my mug of coffee in hand, I pass by the fireplace, the very spot where Grace would act out her forgetfulness, and the spot where Richard would yell instructions like a retired commander who mistook sympathy for weakness. This place is presently inhabited by none of them, and their shadow doesn't either. Warm whites and gentle olive greens now adorn the walls. It is a brand new sofa. The front door, the locks, the flooring, the light fixtures, and I are all in this together. I held on to one item, the ding in the countertop of the kitchen. Years ago on Thanksgiving, Ethan flinched as if he had just shattered a valuable relic and dropped the carving knife. I sobbed uncontrollably. It was a poignant memory that lingers in my mind. A time before our relationship turned into a calculated move. I held on to it not because it brought me joy. However, I was reminded of whoever wronged you once brought a grin to your face. I still don't feel bad about lending them a hand. When I was engrossed in it, I lost track of who I was. For the rest of my life, it is entirely filled. I was elevated to senior litigation counsel last quarter and am still employed at the firm. The large caseload I'm carrying helps me stay sharp. 2 times a month, I give talks at shelters and health centers, where I tell the tale of how I overcame financial abuse and legal manipulation in my marriage. A few of them even weep. Not everyone agrees. As they slip away, some keep their heads down and silent. Some, though, they ascend thereafter, and they assert, I believed I was insane. At first, I believed I was alone. The reality is what I tell them. There's no need to worry. Do not be afraid. You are strong. I'm here to help. I've launched a women's advocacy group called Second Foundation to assist working women in navigating the legal system in the event that they experience domestic violence. How to document is something we instruct them on. How to keep valuables safe. Advice on seeing warning signs in situations when they masquerade as wedding vows or Sunday meals. That's the one thing I really desire, so I made it just for them. Also, in my case, sometime I have conversations with Benjamin. Very seldom, exact amount. As he passes through Austin, he checks in. Prior to ending the call, he consistently states, "The amount I owe you is greater than you realize." My standard response is, "Something escaped us both." His split with Olivia occurred 6 months subsequent to the case. Their home was sold by him. New beginnings near San Antonio. Somehow he appears to be less heavy, same as I am. People often wonder how I was able to forgive them. Not me. In the end, I had to forgive myself because they lingered for an excessive amount of time. Because I loved too naively, for putting my devotion ahead of my own tiredness. Giving up on my own love in favor of another's was the true betrayal. Never again will I do that. Intended for no one. What have I discovered? Every single thing. What I've realized is that love is nothing more than control with fragrance. Marital unions are more like partnerships than contracts. Plus, it's not a partnership if you're the sole investor. You are a subject. The fact that financial abuse may be subtle is something I've learned. It has nothing to do with scrapes or violent altercations. Other times there's just quiet. We call it gaslighting. It's trusting while you're weary and signing something. Someone told you you're too emotional when you pointed out that the numbers don't match up. But beyond anything else, being strong doesn't imply you're perfect. All the time, I realized. It denotes being aware of how to better construct oneself. More powerful, wiser, worthy. There is new laughter in this house. On wine nights, friends drop by. As I prepare food, I listen to music. As a weekly tradition, the table is adorned with fresh flowers. Not because someone else pays for them. On the other hand, I do. I think that's everything. No, that is all.